From the College of Medicine Class of 2005, an Infectious Disease Specialist. Please help me welcome Dr. Joseph Adrian Buensalido.
Good afternoon, fellow Lasallians. The last time we got together like this, particularly the medicine alumni, was back in 2020. And it's so heartwarming to do it again, seeing how numerous this community has become. And more especially since we just experienced something unique and once in a lifetime. Of course, I'm talking about the pandemic. Soon after our 2020 reunion, COVID-19 arrived in the Philippines. In fact, I was interviewed before we had our first cases. And at that time, I said that we were ready to face COVID-19. At that time, it was still called 2019 nCoV, before being renamed to SARS-CoV-2 and the disease to COVID-19. Suddenly, our life became very different. We found ourselves in masks, gowns, wearing gloves, booties, head caps. Maybe some of us had disinfection units, such as there on your right. On the right was really ours. My wife, Dr. Jocel, made it so that we would remove our clothes and put on a fresh set of house clothes that we would wear for a bit before rushing to take a bath to rinse off all the germs from the whole day outside. And then after the gowns, what was next? The fashion became coveralls. And of course, the face shield, which ended up being controversial. Our Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Diseases collated the evidence for it, and at the time when COVID-19 was still a high morbidity and high mortality disease because of its novel nature, lack of immunity in our population, its infectivity, the conclusion was that it was beneficial at the time, but no longer. I'm sure everyone remembers the lockdowns. From traffic to no traffic, from crowding to hardly any people on the streets, ECQs, MECQs, GCQs, and other CQs. And of course, social distancing, also known as physical distancing. To me, this was our war, and I wrote about it. The following, after this slide, is in the book, and this is just an excerpt. The COVID-19 problem was our battle, ours. If during our grandparents' reign, it was the Second World War, and Rizal and Bonifacio fought Spain, for us, viruses were our enemies. Masks and face shields were our weapons. Alcohol, soap, water, distance, all these. For this war, we did not need guns. And since we were the ones who faced the germ that changed the face of the earth and became our mortal enemy, I decided not to let the opportunity pass. I started documenting what happened, what I experienced, and what we collectively experienced during our lifetime's important war. And with Dr. Jocel, my classmate, my batchmate, and fellow De La Salle alumna who made the artwork and illustrations, we were able to come out with our first book entitled Mikrobyong Maliit, Pandemyang Pasakit, ang tinulang salaysay ng pandemyang COVID-19. This book poetically narrated the events of the pandemic experience from 2020 to 2021. And like I mentioned, Dr. Jocel's art added visual poetry, so to speak, to my historical and narrative poetry. One of her paintings that's in the book, of course, was actually displayed during the 2021 UNESCO Art Exhibit in Paris. She was the only Filipino who was invited to that art exhibit. And that's Jocel. No? The one in the middle is the one that was exhibited in Paris, and there she was at work. So, yeah, we were also very fortunate that the rock star of Philippine history, Professor Ambeth Ocampo, wrote the foreword of the book. And he said, and I quote, "One of the primary sources for the Philippines will be Mikrobyong Maliit, Pandemyang Pasakit. an essay in verse by Dr. Joseph Adrian Buensalido, illustrated by his better half, Dr. Jocel Buensalido. And in the next slide, he mentions they, and that includes all of us, no? We're frontliners in the war against an invisible, unknown enemy. Buensalido draws inspiration from Philippine history, particularly Jose Rizal, patriot and physician, which actually is my favorite hero. Now again, if Rizal and Bonifacio fought Spain, that was our fight. And this book is a memento of what we all went through. It is a documentation of the events and lessons that we should always remember and never forget. But the pandemic didn't end in 2021, and we should also remember 2022, which is why we came out with Mikrobyong Maliit, Pandemyang Pasakit 2, ang tinulang salaysay ng pandemyang COVID-19, monkeypox at iba pa. Remember, dumating yung monkeypox, but fortunately, hindi siya pumalan. And for this book, we recruited additional artists to help Jocel, and they are Jaime, our firstborn and only son, and Alexi, our one and only daughter. In fact, Alexi had the most number of artworks in Mikrobyo Book, the pink book. No? Here are a couple of messages from some people about Mikrobyo Book. So these, Dr. Willianco, who wrote Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer, said the Buensalido's poetry and art tells us that we should never forget that we should confront our trauma, make peace with it, and most importantly, rejoice in our triumphs. Thank you, Johnny, for documenting the pandemic with your wonderful, humorous poems. It is a love letter to a generation that has survived, suffered, and in different ways survived. And Dr. Edsel Salvania also wrote, Johnny's witty lines, complemented by art from his family members, vividly capture the uncertainty, anxiety, and eventual relief the Filipino nation felt as the tide turned in 2022 and deaths from COVID-19 started to decouple from cases as a result of widespread vaccination. This new book is both a factual record and a fine tapestry of emotions. What better way to heal than to transform shared experiences into a work of art? And now for some additional good news, because some people have requested it, and so that we can share our Philippine COVID-19 pandemic experience to the rest of the world, I translated the first book to English. Here are a couple of descriptions by some doctors about the book. Dr. Janice Kawili, President of the Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Diseases, wrote, what Johnny has written uniquely captures the thoughts, fears, and aspirations of every frontliner. The beautiful illustrations of Jocel made the book even more special. And Dr. Marion Kwek, another ID specialist, shared, for generations to come, this book will serve as a reminder of what we have all experienced. I therefore reiterate, let us never forget the lessons of history, our history, that we lived through a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. Pick up and get a copy of Mikrobyong Maliit, Pandemyang Pasakit 1 and 2, ang tinulang salaysay ng pandemyang COVID-19 to solidify our memories. And you may pick up as well and get a copy of Mini Microbe, Painful Pandemic, a poetic narration of the Philippine COVID-19 pandemic, and give it to the younger generation. Open up the books, and in one of the pages of each book, there is a proclamation page, such as this one. I invite you to write your name and where you're from. Sign the page, signify that you are proud to say that you lived during the COVID-19 pandemic, that you survived that horrific time in human history, that many died and did not see the dawn shine on the land they were born in, but that those of us who were left behind and saw the dawn, may we welcome it with all our hearts. May we never forget those who fell in the dark night of the COVID-19 era. I would like to end by showing all three books, Mikrobyong Maliit, Pandemyang Pasakit 1 and 2, and Mini Microbe, Painful Pandemic, a poetic narration of the Philippine COVID-19 pandemic. All three books are available at our booth. Please also visit our Facebook page, our Instagram, our YouTube channel. Like, share, and follow. I am Dr. Joseph Adrian Buensalido again, and on behalf of my wife, Dr. Jocel Soria Buensalido, both of us from batch 2005 of the De La Salle College of Medicine, let me say thank you for your attention. Thank you too to the De La Salle College of Medicine, the whole MHSI, and all in the administration for allowing me to speak and for molding us into what we are today. Proven Lasallian health workers who successfully faced and defeated the Mikrobyong Maliit or the mini microbe and are now ready to face the next enemy who will come our way. Animo Lasalle.